Very unpleasant business, I'm afraid, Mr. Birch. What have you to say about it?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Well, what do you expect me to say? The blinking woman snaps out from the blinking cupboard, and out falls a blinking corpse. Right back away. Haven't got over it yet. No good asking me anything, you know, because I don't know anything.
That's your statement, is it, sir? You know nothing at all about it.
Well, I didn't kill the fellow. I didn't even know him.
You didn't know him, but you've heard of him?
Oh, I heard he was a nasty bit of goods.
In what kind of way?
Oh, a kind of fellow that women like and men have no use for.
You've no idea why he should come back to the house a second time this evening?
No, not a clue.
Anything between him and the present Mrs. Hailsham Brown, do you think?
Oh, Clarissa? Good God, no. Clarissa's got a lot of sense. She wouldn't look twice at a fellow like that.
So, you can't help us?
Sorry, but there it is.
You'd no idea that there was a body concealed in that recess?
Of course not.
Thank you, sir.
What?
That's all. Thank you, sir.
Oh, Mr. Birch.
Huh?
This way. He was a mine of information, wasn't he? Mind you, not very nice for a JP to be mixed up in a murder.
Sit down. Your name?
Jeremy Warrender.
Address?
340 Broad Street and 34 Grosvenor Square. Country address, Heppleston, Wiltshire.
A gentleman of independent means.
No, I'm private secretary to Sir Lazarus Stein. Those are his addresses.
How long have you been with him?
About a year.
Did you, know this man, Oliver Costello?
I heard of him till tonight.
You didn't meet him when he came to the house earlier this evening?
Well, no, I'd gone over to the golf club with the others. We were dining there, you see. It was the servants' night out, and Mr. Birch asked us if we'd dine with him at the club.
Was Mrs. Hailsham Brown asked too?
No. Well, that is, she could have come if she'd liked.
She was asked then, and she refused.
No. No, what I mean is, well, Hailsham Brown is usually quite tired when he gets down here in the evenings, and so Clarissa said that they just have a scratch meal here, as usual.
So Mrs. Hailsham Brown expected her husband to dine here. She didn't expect him to go out again as soon as he came in.
Well, I really don't know. No, I believe she did say that he was going to be out this evening.
Seems odd, then, that Mrs. Hailsham Brown should not have come out to the club instead of remaining here to dine all by herself.
Well, it was the kid. Clarissa wouldn't like to go out to leave the kid all by herself in the house.
Or perhaps she was making plans to receive a visitor of her own.
I say, that's a rotten thing to say. And it isn't true.
Yet Oliver Costello came here to meet someone. The servants were out. Miss Peake has her own cottage. There really is no one else he could have come here to meet except Mrs. Hailsham Brown.
All I can say is you ask her.
I have asked her.
And what did she say?
Just what you said, Mr. Warrender.
There you are, then.
Now, tell me how you all happened to come back here from the club. Was that the original plan?
Yes. I mean, no.
Which do you mean, sir?
Well, it was like this. We all went over to the club. Sir Roland and old Hugo went straight into the dining room, and I came in a bit later. It's all cold buffet, you know. I'd been knocking balls about till it got dark, and then someone said, bridge. And I said, well, why don't we come back and play here? So we did.
I see, so it was your idea.
I don't remember who suggested it first. Hugo Birch, I think.
And you arrived back here when?
I can't say exactly. Probably left the clubhouse just a bit before 8.
And what, it's about 5 minutes walk?
Just about. The golf course adjoins this garden.
And then you played bridge?
Yes.
That must have been about 20 minutes before my arrival. Surely you hadn't time to complete 2 rubbers of bridge and start a third?
What? Oh, no. No, that first rubber must have been from yesterday's score.
Only one person seems to have scored.
Yes, I'm afraid we're all a bit lazy about scoring. We left it to Clarissa.
Did you know about the passageway between this room and the library?
No, I'd no idea. Wonderful bit of camouflage, isn't it? You'd never guess.
Consequently, you couldn't know that there was a body concealed there, could you?
You could have knocked me over with a feather, as the saying goes. Absolute blood and thunder melodrama. Couldn't believe my eyes.
These your gloves, Mr. Warrender?
No. I mean, yes.
You were wearing them when you came back from the golf club?
Yes, there's a bit of a nip in the air this evening.
I think you're mistaken. These have Mr. Hailsham Brown's initials inside them.
funny. I've got a pair just the same.
These, perhaps?
Ah, well, you don't catch me out a second time. After all, one pair of gloves looks pretty much like another.
3 pairs of gloves, all with Hailsham Brown's initials inside them. Curious.
It is his house, after all.
The only interesting thing about them is that you thought one pair might have been yours, whereas I think your gloves are just sticking out of your pocket now. No, the other pocket. Here we are. Stein, Sir Lazarus. Chairman. Recreations philately, golf, fishing. Dress. What's you got there?
Oh, it's just a card, sir. I found it under the sofa there.
Ace of spades. Very interesting card. Here, wait a minute. Red. Same pack. Oh, well. No ace of spades. Now, that's very remarkable, don't you think, Jones?
Oh, yes, sir. It's very remarkable indeed.
As we were finishing dinner at the golf club, Mrs. Hailsham Brown rang up and suggested that as her husband had had unexpectedly the cards, we 3 should come back here and make up a 4 for bridge. We did that. About 20 minutes after we had started playing, you arrived, Inspector. The rest you know.
That's not quite Mr. Warrender's account of the matter.
Oh, really?
He said that the suggestion to play bridge came from one of you 3. Mr. Birch, he thought.
Ah, but you see, Warrender came back into the dining room rather late. He didn't realize that Mrs. Hailsham Brown had rung up.
The dead man, Oliver Costello, came to this house with some particular object in mind. Do you agree to that, sir?
Oh, absolutely. He came back here to return certain objects which the first Mrs. Hailsham Brown had taken away in error.
That may have been his excuse. He came perhaps to see a particular person. May have been Mr. Warrender or Mr. Birch.
Wanted to see Mr. Birch, surely he would have gone to Birch's house.
So, that leaves us with a choice of 4 people. You, Mr. Warrender, Mr. and Mrs. Hailsham Brown. Now, how well did you know Oliver Costello?
Oh, hardly at all. I met him once or twice, that's all.
Where did you meet him?
Twice at the Hailsham Browns in London, and once, I believe, in a restaurant.
But you had no particular reason for wishing to murder him.
Is that an accusation, Inspector?
No, Sir Roland. I'd call it more of an elimination. I don't think you have any motive for doing away with Oliver Costello. So that leaves 3 people. We'll take Mr. Warrender. How well do you know him?
Oh, not at all. I met him here for the first time 2 days ago. I know nothing about him, Inspector, but I should have said an unlikely murderer.
So much for Mr. Warrender. That brings me to my next question.
How well do I know Henry Hailsham Brown and Mrs. Hailsham Brown? Henry Hailsham Brown, I know very well indeed. He's an old friend. Of Clarissa, I know all there is to know. She is my ward, Inspector, and inexpressibly dear to me.
Yes, I think that answer makes certain things very clear.
Does it indeed?
Why did you leave the club this evening? Why did you come back here and pretend to play bridge?
Pretend.
This card was found on the other side of the room, under the sofa. I can hardly believe that you could have played 2 rubbers of bridge and started a 3rd with a pack of 51 cards and the ace of spades missing.
Yes, perhaps that is a little difficult to believe.
I also think that 3 pairs of Mr. Hailsham Brown's gloves need a certain amount of explanation.
I'm afraid you'll get no explanation from me, Inspector.
No, sir. I take it that you're out to do your best for a certain lady. But it's no good, sir. Mrs. Hailsham Brown knew the body was in that recess. Whether she dragged it there herself or whether you helped her, I don't know, but she knew. Now, I suggest Oliver Costello came to this house to meet Mrs. Hailsham Brown and to obtain money from her by threats.
Threats? Threats of what?
And that'll come out, no doubt. Mrs. Hailsham Brown's young, attractive, gay. This Mr. Costello was attractive to the ladies, they say. Now, Mrs. Hailsham Brown's newly married and...
Inspector, I think I must put you right on certain matters. Henry Hailsham Brown's first marriage was unfortunate. His wife, Miranda, was a beautiful woman, but unstable and neurotic. Her health and disposition finally degenerated to such a degree that her little daughter had to be taken away to a nursing home. It seems that she had become a drug addict. Now, how she obtained those drugs was never found out, but it was generally believed that they were supplied to her by this man, Oliver Costello. She became infatuated with him and finally ran away with him. Henry Hersham Brown allowed her to divorce him. He's somewhat old-fashioned in his views. He has now found peace and happiness in his marriage with Clarissa, and I can assure you, Inspector, that there are no guilty secrets in Clarissa's life. There is nothing, I can swear, with which Oliver Costello could possibly threaten her. Now, don't you think, Inspector, that you may be on the wrong track? Why are you so certain that it was a person that Costello came here to see? Why could it not have been a place?
What do you mean, sir?
Well, you mentioned that the late Mr. Selland may have been involved with drugs. Isn't there a possible link there? Drugs, Selland's house? Supposing Oliver Costello wanted something in this house, in that desk perhaps. Now, supposing that someone followed him down here and that someone struck him down there by that desk.
There's a great deal of supposition in what you say.
Very reasonable hypothesis, I think.
The hypothesis being that this someone knew the body was in the recess.
Exactly.
That would mean someone who knew about the recess.
Ah, someone who knew about it in Selland's time.
That's all very well, sir, but it doesn't explain one thing.
Oh, really? What is that?
Mrs. Hailsham Brown knew the body was in that recess. She tried to prevent us looking there. She knew.
Inspector, will you allow me to speak to my ward?
Only in my presence, sir.
That will do.
Jones?
We are very much in your hands, Inspector. I will ask you to make what allowances you can.
Come in, please, Mrs. Hailsham Brown.
Clarissa, my dear, will you do what I ask you? Tell the inspector the truth.
Truth?
The truth is the only thing to do.
Sit down, Mrs. Hailsham Brown.
I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry I told you all those lies. I didn't mean to. One gets into things, if you know what I mean.
I can't say that I do know. Now, please give us the facts.
Well, it's all quite simple, really. You see, Oliver left, then Henry came home. Then he went off again in the car. Then I came in here with the sandwiches.
Sandwiches?
Yes, you see, my husband's bringing home a very important delegate from abroad.
Oh, who is this delegate?
Mr. Jones. I put the sandwiches down there, and then I took a book and put it back on the bookshelf. And then I practically fell over it.
You fell over the body.
Yes, it was there behind the sofa. I looked to see if he was dead, and he was. So I rang up the golf club and I asked Sir Roland, Mr. Birch, and Jeremy Warrender to come over.
Didn't it occur to you to telephone the police?
Oh, it occurred to me, yes, but then, well, I didn't.
You didn't? Why not?
Well, I didn't think it would be very nice for my husband. You see, people in the Foreign Office like everything very quiet, not noticeable. You must admit that murders are noticeable.
Quite so.
I'm so glad you understand. I mean, he was quite dead because I felt his pulse. And I thought he might just as well be dead in Marsden Wood as in our drawing room.
Marsden Wood? Where's Marsden Wood come into it?
Oh, that's where I was thinking of putting him.
You realize the seriousness of what you're saying?
Oh, yes, I do, and I'm telling you the truth. So, you see, I rang up the club and they all came over.
And you persuaded them to hide the body in the recess?
Oh, no, that came later. My plan was that they should take the body in Oliver's car to Marsden Wood.
And they agreed?
They agreed.
Frankly, Mrs. Hailsham Brown, I don't believe a word of it.
You wouldn't believe me if I told you the truth.
I can see only one reason why those three men should agree to lie. If they believed or knew that you'd killed him.
Oh, but I had no reason for killing him. Absolutely no reason. I knew you'd react this way. That's what...